Welcome back to Ladies Who Create, a show where we'll be interviewing the incredibly inspiring women who are trailblazing the design and creative industries. I'm your co-host, Liz Meyer, a creative director and half of the Datalands duo.
And I'm your other co-host, Jess Rosenberg, and I'm a creative director currently working in the tech industry.
Today, we're excited to welcome Jolene Delisle, founder and principal at The Working Assembly. We talked to Jolene about her career journey, going from in-house at a large tech company to founding an incredibly successful agency, overcoming personal roadblocks, the art of self-promotion, and discovering the joy of opening a brick-and-mortar shop.
Hi, Jolene. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's so great having you here.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Today, we're here with Jolene Delisle of The Working Assembly. Amazing creative agency that is like taking the world by storm, I would say. It's everywhere on all of my feeds all the time, and I'm always blown away by the work that you're doing. Can you share a little bit of your backstory for those who don't know, of what inspired you to start your own agency and, keep it going and all that good stuff?
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, the Working Assembly started, actually the name I think is very telling. So I was working kind of full time, a little bit uninspired at my day job. I really loved advertising, but I kind of missed, as a designer, I kind of missed kind of getting into the weeds of like the brand building and design. And oftentimes when you are in advertising, you're getting a brand kind of at a later stage. And so a couple of the projects I had, which I was really inspired by at work, was, working on innovation. So thinking about new products and opportunities for some of the larger brands that we worked on to like create new things. And even though those didn't really go anywhere, I love that process. And I thought, maybe there's an opportunity for me to complement my day job, which I did love, but it was just very much like kind of routine, like with the advertising and campaign work, to also maybe think about doing some kind of branding and brand development for earlier stage brands. And so I created an LLC called Working Assembly because I was working full time. And the idea was I would assemble myself and some creative friends to work on projects like as they came up. So I started doing that very casually, like very early on. And then I would say probably 2017, it really like heated up when we started getting some larger brands who wanted to work with us. Started working with, some well-known startups that wound up really taking off. And then those brands started referring us to other brands. And I realized that, I couldn't, potentially do like a day job plus also the agency anymore. And actually, I didn't wind up quitting my full-time job until 2019, which is actually alarming for a lot of people because I had employees in the office, and I was still kind of trying to do both. And I think I was very nervous, if I'm honest, because I had my daughter in 2017. So I was a little bit nervous about the idea of, quitting something that seemed a little bit stable. I was freelancing full time essentially, but, I had such a great network of work coming in, this idea of like quitting my job and just really focusing on building an agency. It was nothing that I ever even dreamed of doing. So for me to kind of go all in on that was a little bit, I was really nervous, but, by the time I did that in 2019, I think that was like kind of when I stopped ever doing any other outside freelance work. We were, at that point we were around like 25 employees and we had, multiple seven figures like in revenue. And it was like, okay, this is actually like a real thing. And I think it took me a long time to like actually even believe in myself that I still sometimes am like, oh, I do have a job. I do have an agency, but I like forget that sometimes,
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't know that you had a job while you started The Working Assembly. That's amazing. How I feel like I felt like it's been around for longer. It feels so massive of a presence in the design world that that's so interesting. Like that it's actually fairly new. I mean, 7 years isn't that new. I'm like, I also had my daughter in 2017. So I'm just thinking about my trajectory and yeah, that's wild. That's amazing. I can't believe you had 25 people in an office and a job and
yeah.
Did your employees know you were juggling both, or was it kind of like this secret on the side?
I mean, So in 2017, I think especially, we had maybe a couple employees, and they knew like I was trying to do both. I was trying to figure out the whole thing, and I was very transparent. I was like, hey, you're a contractor. I had mostly contractors at that time in 2017. I was like, you're a full-time contractor. Like, I'm hoping this can become a full-time thing, but I'm not sure. I had hired one of my really good friends as a managing director, and she still actually works with me now to this day. I'm really grateful for her. Um, and she was kind of doing a lot of the day-to-day. Lawrence, who's my partner, he also was like day-to-day. He had quit his job and was like doing it full-time. So we did have full-time people who were like managing. But I think, yeah, it was definitely like people didn't necessarily understand the extent of how much I was stretching myself, working. At the time I was working at Instagram as a design lead. And then I was, would basically like go to the office early in the day because we had an office in Union Square. I would kind of check in with the team. I would, kind of set up the day. Then I would go to Instagram's office, work, and then come back at the end of the day and like kind of try to wrap up or see like other things I needed to do. So I was definitely burning the candle at both ends. And then I think especially when I gave birth to my daughter that spring, I was like, okay, I need to like really figure out how to like, this is not going to be sustainable. Plus also being able to have my daughter and be there for her. I do regret, I think, especially like the first year or two of her life, I worked so much. I definitely missed out on a lot of things that, it's hard to think about. But when I had my son in 2019, the pandemic happened like shortly after. And it was like pretty incredible to see the contrast of like where I was professionally at that point where, I was kind of just doing working assembly. I had my son, my daughter, and I was able to really kind of slow down and really take time with them while also being able to really appreciate like building the brand and building the agency. So the pandemic was so tough, but in a lot of ways, it was also like such a blessing for me because it was able to really be able to take the time to really appreciate both like the early stage of them growing and also of the company too.
That's awesome. Was there a specific moment that you remember where you made that decision to, do your agency full time?
Yeah, I think like as women, sometimes we focus a lot on like things being like perfect or like as perfect as it can be before we're able to kind of do things. At least for me, I think like that's something that I've noticed a lot like professionally, like a lot of women around me are just so overly prepared. They will, make sure they're experts in whatever they're doing before they ever kind of raise their hand or speak up about a subject or topic. Or even like starting a company, right? It's like we want to have everything like ducks in a row. And I think when in contrast, there's like a lot of men I know who, are starting companies. They have no idea like anything, but they're, the ones that are first out to talk about it. They're the ones to promote it. They're just, they're a lot more brazen about taking chances and risks. And I think that's something that like women, there is like a confidence gap that we need to like bridge a little bit. And so I think once I started recognizing that, as I was meeting like new founders and I was like seeing all these people who are like getting investments and kind of building companies and didn't really have like the background or expertise in those spaces where we're kind of going for it, I was really inspired. And I was also kind of at that point also like questioning like, why am I like so risk averse here? Like why I should just try it. Like if it doesn't work out, I'll figure out something else to do. But yeah, I think that was definitely a big reckoning for me, like being able to work with clients and seeing like the risks they were taking. Like I was talking to some of the founders and they're like, yeah, I'm like second mortgaging my home and like self-funding this, or I cashed out my 401k to like build this company. And I was like, wow, these are people who are really going for it. And I wanted to kind of do the same.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like I am in that boat of women who are women founders, I guess, because I am like the majority owner of my studio. And I don't know why, but I always defer to my partner to speak up about what we're doing in the design and all the like the actual working parts of the projects. And I just find it, the more I speak to women who are strong and they are doing things the way you're probably supposed to be doing them, like just walking out into the world and talking about their work, I feel like I have missed so many opportunities to just become that expert, become the louder voice in the room about the stuff that I know so well, but I'm just kind of too afraid to talk about. I just find that it's a
Yeah.
wild thing. I'm not sure why that is. Like, as studio owners, like, what made you like, when you were finally able to like recognize that in yourself, and like, was there like a moment that you were like, oh, okay, I know I watched all these people do these things, but this is my first chance to get my voice out there? Like, what was like that moment where you actually made the leap into being the leader that you are now?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I think that I've been very fortunate that I've had some amazing people around me who've really like believed in me and who've I think have provided me just a lot of unconditional support that has made all of this possible. One being like my husband, who also I work with, my best friend, who I also work with. There's just a lot of people in my like world who serendipitously have like come together to like make this work with me. So I definitely don't take that for granted. I think like a lot of having a great support system is like huge, and not even just a support system like at work, but also like personally too, like having friends who like I've had to make like conscious decisions to like really like cultivate like a friend group and people around me who also are like inspiring and doing things and taking chances, and are people who are really encouraging. And I think that's huge. Like if you can kind of think about like getting rid of voices that maybe don't help serve you, and adding voices that do, I think that's huge. And like this type of like world, like where you and I have met and like serendipitously like are like hopefully going to collaborate or do something together at some point, or just like even just talk and be inspired by each other. I think that really helps, like more than you even know. I think a lot of it sounds sometimes like bullshit, but like it also is just, it's this like powerful force that I think, an energy that actually is really helpful. The second thing I would say
Yeah.
is that like I started talking to so many like I said, founders or early stage founders, and I realized that for women especially, having kind of the brand and creative support that our agency was able to give them really gave them like the confidence and like the leg up to be able to raise money, to like, you know, get attention, to get meetings for investors, or, to get into the retail stores they wanted to. And so I realized that like that was really powerful, that support. And so I think I think part of like any kind of fear or concern I had about like whether this is going to work or not, I kind of put it aside, because I realized like, oh, this like I'm really focused on something that's really like values driven and like bigger than me, and like bigger than maybe any type of like concerns I have about my own like safety or like comfort, where I was like, I really believe in this. I really want to help people the best that I can with like the talents that I've been given. And so I think that's kind of like the time that I made that leap. And then also I think just personally I realized like I am going to be completely burnt out if I try to do too many things. I think there's like this like element of like women, we have like a lot of like invisible labor at home. And then also, at work, I was doing a ton too. And it's just like at some point, like we have a capacity issue, like we can't do so much. And I think I just also recognize that like in order to be really successful at anything, I have to really be focused. I mean, that's what I would tell anyone else. And so at that point, I realized like it was only fair to the people that I work with to really be focused there. And then the last thing I'll say is I was hiring really young people, and because that's what like we could afford as far as like the budgets and the projects we were getting. But I also realized it was super unfair to them, because they were coming to work for me, but then I wasn't fully able to like give myself or be like a really great boss or a really great leader, because I was like splitting my time in so many different ways. So I was never really able to focus like on them or mentoring or growing people. And I realized like, okay, I'm not going to have employees unless I can actually give them that investment and that time and energy, because they're choosing to like spend their valuable time in their career with me. Like I need to give them that same respect back. So I think at that point I also realized like, okay, if I'm actually going to grow a company, like I need to actually like be there and be present.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that makes total sense. Oh, I feel like I have a lot to think about later. Like how I can bring my more true, authentic self to my job, my life, my job, to my house, all of the things. Yeah.
When you realize you had to kind of give more attention and focus to those younger designers, were there other roles that you had to hire as you kind of shifted from, doing everything basically?
Yep. I think that we definitely needed to invest in like certain skills that, we weren't equipped at. Like I think designers are pretty incredible in that we're very resourceful, right? Like really good designers are like problem solvers, right? So it's our instinct to be like, okay, sometimes we can like manage things. We can also be the person talking to the client. We can also be the one creating things behind the scenes. We can also be directing things. There's just a lot that we do like innately as designers. And I think a lot of that, I was like, okay, I'm going to hire designers. They're going to kind of self-manage and we're going to work directly with clients and we're going to be really close knit. But then I realized like, oh, there's actually a reason why for as long as agencies existed, there's been like account people and there's been really good strategists and there's been really good people who are like specialized in being able to like navigate those waters and those relationships. And as much as designers like can do it, we shouldn't have to do all of those things. And so, yeah, for sure. We made the investment, I would say, especially in the last like 2 years into hiring brand people. We call them brand managers. And they're really kind of these stewards who really are some of the most like creative people I've met, but they like, even though their job isn't, technically to be creative, but they are just like so creative in like their way that they resource, they're creative in the way that they like think about projects and think about the bigger picture. They're strategic. And so we brought in a bunch of those people. And I think that's been like a game changer for the agency. Like it's been able to give the designers and the creatives on our team like the proper space to be able to then like really do what they do best versus trying to do everything. And so I think like some of the expectation, like I said, that I had put on myself of like doing it all, like I've also had to kind of alleviate that pressure on my team because no one can do it all, right? And just because you think for some reason that you are doing it all, like it's like it shouldn't. Someone shouldn't have to if they don't need to.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a female thing too. Like I see so many women, especially moms. I'm a mom myself, and I definitely feel this myself. The pressure to just like do too much, and
Yeah.
when I personally step away from doing too much, I'm like, oh my God, I need to be doing something. Like it's just, it's kind of crazy. I'm like, I need to just chill and like read a book outside, but that seems hard too.
Yeah, I noticed that like running a studio, oh my gosh, it's like there's never, the list of things to do is never ending. And then on top of it, if you are hiring, like what we do is we mostly hire contractors to help us do, one-off kind of projects. But there's so many things that need to get done every day. It's between answering the emails, setting up decks, talking to new clients. There's like just responding to people who are sending their resume to you unsolicited, like there's all these like random things that you have to do every day. And then there's the design work. That it's like, it's like how do you, and then having a child at the end of the day, like you have to go get her from school and then you have to like hang out with, it's like, I'm finding like a really hard time balancing all of those things. And I'm very curious to hear how you actually balance your day to day, like versus like as a big picture, but like more like the days. How do you do it? I'm so interested.
Yeah, I don't know who said this because it definitely wasn't me who first said it, but I have kind of dismissed the idea of like a balance and more into a blend. And so, I think about like the way that I am at home and the way I am at work and the person I am in both those environments. I think of them as very much one and the same. So like when I'm at work, I am open about being a mom. I'm open about, things I care about outside of work, like other projects or other passions. When I'm at home, I talk to my kids about my job and what I do every day. And I think a lot of that is this idea of like, we to be fully present, you have to kind of leave one or the other at the door. And I really tried to like blend both of those elements in my life. And so I realized like I'm really fortunate to be able to do that. But there's some days where like I need to be like a mom and my kid is sick and like I need to like not work because I need to like focus on that. And I have no childcare and I'm like, my husband's traveling and, I'm on my own and I have to like also go to Trader Joe's and like my dog threw up. Like there's like just like things that just happen. And like, and then there's also like work things where it's like a client's really unhappy and like I need to like kind of stay late to focus on getting this work to a finish line and I'm going to miss bedtime and I'm going to like be okay with that. I'm not going to beat myself up over it. And so I think a lot of that is like this like permission to like understand that like life is messy. It's not compartmentalized and a lot of it will kind of blend and overlap each other in certain ways. And it's okay to do that and be a full person in all those areas and give yourself grace to like understand that like, yeah, like there's never going to be like this perfect balance of like 50% here and 50% there. It's going to always be these kind of like, it's like a Jenga piece where you're kind of constantly like building on top of each other and trying to like figure it out. And so I think once I let the idea of like balance go, like I think that's been a huge like liberating thing for me, being able to understand like there's just never going to be 2 days are the same and that's okay. And there's also going to be like days where I'm going to be amazing at one thing and really suck at the other. And that's okay too.
Are you a Libra by any chance?
I'm a Virgo actually, which is like so funny because that like I've had to like beat the perfectionism out of me, because that's like how Virgos are. But I think like other parts of Virgos like has really benefited me too, like in the fact that I'm like really hardworking and like I'm able to like be really focused when I need to be and those things. But yeah, I've had to like let some of the other traits like.
Wait, I'm a Cancer. What does that mean?
Cancer. I forget.
I'm very very emotional. I let my feelings get hurt a lot.
The Libras are typically always searching for balance. So I love your explanation of just the reality of like that's never really possible. Like that's not a real expectation out of life to be balanced all the time.
Yeah. And I think just like also understanding that there's a lot of outside pressure and voices that come in where, I do sometimes think like, oh, I would love to be a class parent. I would love to be able to be there for this. I would love to do that. And then there's also the reality where I'm like, oh, I would love to get that project, or I would love to grow my agency this way, or I'd love to do that. And like, there is always this like comparison is like, what is it? The thief of joy. It's like you kind of always are kind of like, oh, I wish I could be doing all those things. But I think for me, I've tried to really be okay with the idea that like, this is what I can do and this is what I'm able to do. And this is what I'm grateful to be able to do. And like, it's not always going to be perfect. And if I miss certain things, like it'll be okay.
I'd love to hear more about Cherries, your ice cream and snack shop. You're clearly a very busy professional and parent. I'd love to hear what, prompted you to start an ice cream shop up in upstate New York.
Yes. Like the most tasty ice cream. I've been there. It is wonderful. Definitely went off season, but it is really good.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. So I think, okay, so 2017, I started the agency, was really deeply focused on client work. I think with the pandemic, I realized like, oh, there's this like moment to also think about what are the things I really care about, and am I losing kind of perspective on that, just trying to grow the agency as fast as I can and make money in some way for the team and, to kind of reinvest in the company. And I've always thought about outside projects. I've always wanted to like do as many of them as I can. I think like as like innately creative people, like you all are doing this podcast, like there's a lot of things that we all like are excited and interested to do that kind of expends like our creative energy, like where we can. And I would drive by this ice cream shop. We had bought a place in upstate around 2019, like right before the pandemic. And we would drive by this place on 209. I would say, the place is so cute. You could tell it has like this mid-century vibe to it, but it obviously had been kind of like overgrown and like they had done all these kind of odd like renovations to it that just structurally made it look like less like cute and adorable and like mid-century. And I had joked to my friend who actually now works here also, who at the time was working in real estate. And I said, if that place ever goes for sale, like, let me know. Cause I think like there is such a hole up here for like a really great like ice cream option or, really great like kind of place to get like burgers and a hot dog and like a Dairy Queen and all of that. And she was like, that place has been, in a family with a family for a long time. Like, I don't think it's going to go for sale anytime soon. Don't hold your breath. And then of course, like just like serendipitously with the pandemic and everything else, like the owner decided to like put it up for sale. It was kind of closed for a while. And I remember that conversation. I was like, you know what? I think I should like buy that place. I don't know why. I just was like, my gut was like, I think we should do it. And like my husband's so supportive. He was like, yeah, let's go for it. Not even thinking about the fact we never like ran a restaurant before, never made ice cream in our life, like any of those things. But I think like we were excited by the challenge. And I think like for the team at the agency, I was excited about giving us a project that we could just creatively be really free with, like we can produce something and put it out in the world and make it so it's real. It's not a spec thing, but like we can also do something that we're excited about and like use it as a canvas to experiment with things or try things. And we're actually opening a candy shop there as well this summer that like, so we're going to do all this like branded packaging and everything where we're like, hey, let's just try things and throw it against the wall and like have a little bit of a playground for everyone where it's outside of a client like thing or ask, and we can all kind of try to do things. So there's people on my team who just like make merch for it sometimes, or people who love to take photos, or people who are love to write menu copy. And, it's just been a really great way for us to all express ourselves. And then on the other side, it's been really fulfilling from a community aspect because, I mean, Liz, you live upstate, so you know how wild, especially with the pandemic, like people went with real estate and like with costs and inflation and things that happened, that a lot of people who were like locals to the area also got really priced out. And I think a little bit ostracized from like any of the new places that were opening. They've often felt times it was like really catered to like a city crowd. And so I was like, is there an opportunity to do something that feels really kind of designed and like creative and fun, but also could really be a community hub that would really appeal to people who are both like locals as well as like people who are maybe not from the town itself. And so, we did that in two ways. We tried to really make things that were really quality products, but also we serve it pretty much at cost. So it's, all of our prices are really like well below like the prices of most places. But I think that also means that we get like a really nice cross section of people. So it becomes like this place that people really like to come and gather. I was joking like with someone about this like a couple weeks ago where I was like, we had like celebrities from like, from the town, like literal celebrities, like Hollywood celebrities. And we also had like, people in like, Trump like MAGA gear. And then we also had like, people who are like, the local like road workers. And then we also had, people who are like from the baseball team, like there from like the Little League. And I was like, it's so awesome to see kind of this cross section of all these people coming together and being in one place. And I think we need more places like that. And so I was excited about it from a personal level, being a place that we could go to that felt like it was really welcoming and inclusive of everyone.
That's awesome. And it sounds like your intentions work to make it inclusive if all of those different types of people are coming and the branding is working.
Yeah. And especially, I think up there, it's like a very unique little spot. It's where a lot of people from the city, they exodus out on Friday nights. They go up to the ridge, the Shwangunk Ridge, and then, or the Roundout Valley, I guess you'd call it. And like, there's a very interesting mix of their abandoned houses right next to like $800,000 new builds and like beautiful, minimal, amazing. And it's just like such an interesting mix that what you get a lot of the time is what you're saying, that like people come up from the city and they make a beautiful restaurant, but it's like priced at like $100 a head. Like it's just the locals are priced out. They can't participate. And so it is really amazing to like see what you're doing with that and like basically revitalizing what was a community hub of an ice cream shop. Like in my tiny little town down the ridge, we have 2 ice cream shops and they are both gone now. They're just empty. So it's sad because I know what they used to be. And I love the idea of that. And the idea of having a brand experiment just in general. Like that is so cool. I want to work there. Personally,
Yeah.
I just want to work at Cherries. But yeah, it's just like so cool. How did you like when you're like thinking about financing something like that? Did you think about it as like a work project more, or did you think about it as like a personal thing that maybe you would like after, maybe you want to move up here full time and do this full time? I don't know. Like, was there like a grandmaster plan to it?
I wish that I thought of things as plans. I think the thing that one of my good friends, Colleen, she said to me, she said, "You are a person of action, but not of detail." And I was like, that's actually 100% accurate. Like I am. Like I'm someone who will like just go for it and try things, but not think about like how I'm going to do it or how it's going to happen. Like all the important things that like go into actually like making something work. And so I did have to personally finance it because we, as an agency, weren't like in a position to do that. And it just also would be really messy with the way that our company is structured. So I personally financed it. So I have like a mortgage and we have a lot of bills for it. And we also had to take a lot of loans out. And so I think like, but ultimately, I think I was just so excited and I kind of felt like it would work. I was like, and I'm already seeing it kind of working. There's definitely been things that like I've had to like also kind of reconcile from like a financial point. Like I can't do everything I want to do like with it. The whole ultimate vision of it hasn't come together yet, but I believe it will. So we're like making the steps towards it. And I've also had to like think about like staffing in a different way because that's like a whole different way that you have to staff like that versus like an agency. And also the motivations of like the people who work at a restaurant or an ice cream shop are different than like your employees at like an agency, and like the type of support they need or the type of visibility they need from you and autonomy, like it all is like really different. So it's not one-to-one. So that was something I had to learn. And I think the other part too is, we originally thought it was going to just be a seasonal business. We were going to just have it open over the summer, which would have been a lot easier. But the reality is that in order to like really make it a place where I could hire really amazing people, which we have in place, I had to make it a year-round business because like they're adult employees who like need this to be like their full-time job and they need this to be their livelihood. And so we never thought we were going to do food. Now we have like a full restaurant in there. I never thought we were going to open like a general store, candy store. Now we have like, we're doing kind of the steps that we can to like make sure that it is kind of year long and it's open 7 days a week, which is quite a lot too to kind of think about all the time. So we've had to do some things and rejigger that dream a little bit just because of the fact like there's some like financial implications and things that we had to do to like make that viable. But I will say like when what as a person of action and not detail, like I was, I just was like, okay, well we don't have indoor seating. We'll just build a building that has indoor seating. Like, oh, we need to like have things that are outside of food and ice cream. Okay, let's like have a general store because we need to have one here. So it's been good too. And like being able to be someone who's very decisive. I think that's like a superpower I have is like, I'm a decisive person, both like in work and life. And so I don't contemplate things too much. I'm always like, let's A/B test it. Like we'll put it into action and figure it out,
It sounds like you're a person of action then detail.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, you're right. That could be.
Yeah, because without the detail, because I'm a person of action, but the details just don't. I'm just like, we're gonna definitely do that thing, and then we start to, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do.
The action then detail is so inspiring and something that for whoever's listening, I hope it can resonate with, because I find that, especially in this economy with like the crazy job market, there are so many people who feel stuck in their jobs and they're scared to leave because they're scared they won't find anything else, or it's just a crazy time right now to be looking. Is there any advice kind of in the realm of the the action then detail, philosophy that you can give to folks who might be in that spot?
Yes. I think that having no plan is a plan. Like, I think that a lot of times we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to follow things in like kind of this linear path. Like, I'm going to get a job here and then I'll get a job there and I'll get a promotion and I'll do this and then I'll have time to do this and I'll also try to travel and I'll also figure this out. And I think like the more we plan, like the more we actually like kind of hold ourselves back a little bit because things don't work out that way. Right. So like I've had every type of weird job that like on paper would not make sense or connect to each other. I, worked in a restaurant when I was like in college to pay for our bills. And I was like, oh, like this is a skill I'll never need again. It's like, well, actually now like that skill has like really come in handy, later on. Or like, I worked, I lived, I've just done a lot of different things that like in theory, like never should have really been connected to each other. So I always say like, try to connect those dots of things that don't really feel like they should make sense, but they will eventually, and just trust that it will work out. Because I do think like, especially people, like you said, in this economy, like I have friends who don't have jobs right now and who are looking, and, or to your point, people who feel really stuck in the job that they have and they feel like, oh, like this economy, I can't like do anything about it. I would just say like, look for the points of inspiration or things that you can do, even like the little things, just try to see if there's like some movements you can make, So I was encouraging my friend who just lost her job. I was like, maybe if this is something else you want to try, like, try to think about like can you take a pay cut? Can you try that for a little while also maybe doing something else? Like you never thought you would do two things at once, but is that something you have capacity to do while you learn one thing and skill up there, like, work on something else? And, I think sometimes things aren't just like as perfect and as like exactly the order that we expect it to happen. And sometimes that's like actually such a gift too, So I think the other thing is like we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that we're going to have everything figured out like right away, or like, we always like, I hate New Year's because everyone's like, oh, this next year I'm going to get all this done. Or, your birthday, you feel like all this pressure, like, oh, did I get everything I wanted to get done this last year? And I think like just letting some of that go and that pressure go is really liberating, because when you stop doing things for like how it appears on the outside or how it should be, I think you can really liberate yourself to find like what you want to do or what you should be doing.
I love that.
Yeah.
Completely
Yeah, that's
agree.
really, I always think about my birthday as like the pinnacle moment of my year, whereas New Year's is like, oh, it's just another day. But then when you actually turn another age, you're like, what did I do with my previous year? Did I make any major changes? And sometimes you haven't. Sometimes you've devolved a little bit, but that's also okay, I think.
Yeah. And also the growth thing tends to come up for me around my birthday time. I'm like, how did I grow this past year? What did I learn? How did I fail? How will I learn from those failures and take them forward? I'm turning 40 soon. And I'm like very much thinking about all of those things. I'm like, milestone year. Like, what have I done? What did I accomplish?
Yeah.
So
and it could also just be like little things too, right? Like some of your accomplishments aren't things that are going to be like on LinkedIn or like be written about or like be things, but like it could be things like I've been able to, really, like learn how to deal with like breaking a bad habit, or I've been able to kind of grow as a person here in like forgiveness, or like understanding how to do this, or I've helped my daughter like learn how to tie her shoes. Like there's like little things that we do that are milestones that we should also celebrate, like that we're all doing, especially as women and mothers. Like you're doing something every day, like you're accomplishing a lot. And so I think like also allowing yourself to be like super proud of like those little things and take moments in that like is also, I think, really helpful in like thinking about accomplishing things over a year.
Totally. Yeah. The daily accomplishments. Something as little as like the other day, I finally, after years of doing my kids' laundry, my husband and I figured out how to not lose socks anymore.
Shame.
That's huge.
Big one. Because that was like a very large source of stress for me for many years. It like really bothered me.
Did you discover like a secret, like a
No,
secret door?
It's silly. It's just like this little mesh bag. And I'm like, now that a couple of my kids are older, I'm like, when you take your socks off, just put them in this little mesh baggie and make sure they stay together. So like throwing them around the house, which they typically do.
Okay.
And it wasn't half the time, but I'm trying to like make the mesh sock bag a thing when I'm doing laundry. Yeah, very silly, but it's a small
It's like
win.
a life hack. You did it.
Yeah, right. It's one of those like TikTok hacks.
I love that. That's great. I'm very happy for you.
Yeah.
I think like maybe taking stock of those moments, the mesh bag moments where they're tiny and they only matter to you, but they're really important.
I should put it on LinkedIn and see what happens. That would be funny.
Where tons of people will be like, congratulations.
Yeah, I started a new job. It's figuring out how to do my kids' laundry better. People say.
Oh, if only we could get paid to do that. That would be.
In the realm of putting things on LinkedIn or self-promotion or even promoting your agency, what types of strategies have you found effective? Curious.
Yeah, I wrestle with this a little bit because I used to find like self-promotion like kind of gross. I was like, oh, this happened, but like I feel embarrassed to put this out there, or like we finished this project, but like, oh, like I don't want to seem braggy about it, or I would just like kind of get in my own head about things, where again, I follow some like men, or I'm connected to men who also have agencies and studios, and they're fine like posting about everything. Probably those socks they would be posting about as well. And so like a lot of the time, like with the agency promotion, especially like even though it seems like self-serving, like if I'm like on a podcast or if I'm in an interview or if like doing those things, like it actually also amplifies and brings a lot of attention to my agency and also the people that we work with and the clients that we work with. So I try to think of it as like less like it's me, like but it's really like me helping to amplify the people around me who are super talented and doing amazing things. So that's been helpful, at least mentally, for me to like kind of get out of that mindset, because I do think that there is like this element of like, oh, we don't want to be like, oh, that's gross to like really like talk about yourself or talk about things that you're doing, and it's like better just like kind of not do that. But at the end of the day, like I do think that there's such few agencies founded by women, and there's also this idea of modeling that is really important. And I do meet like young designers all the time who are always like, I want to start my own agency. I want to like have a family. I want to be able to do both. I want to have passion projects. I want to be able to do things that are outside of work. Like you've been able to do those things. And like, I do think modeling is so important. Like seeing people and hearing about people who are doing things that get you excited or inspired, I think like is only beneficial ultimately. So I do think that the same way I think it's really important for diversity and like seeing things. I always joke that like I wanted to be a journalist when I was younger because the only Asian person I ever saw was Connie Chung on TV, which is like true. And so I think like the same idea though with this, like I had never met any other agency like founders that were women until like I started like being in this world and meeting people. And I think like it's really helpful and important to do that. So as much as like it's not my favorite thing in the world to do, like I really do try to like think about like the greater picture also in like the long scheme. I don't know. How do you all deal with that?
Yeah, that's a great point around modeling and inspiring people. I've found the same. I think the more I post on social media with things that are helpful, like around process or, past experiences, nuggets of wisdom from just like throughout my career, the more posts that are helping people, I think, I could feel good about those. It still feels weird for me to, I don't know, post work and feel braggy about it. I totally, align with you there, but self-promotion, if you want to call it that, in the form of helping people, educating, talking about being a mom, like a working mom,
Yeah. Also, designers are so much with each other. Like, I think we should also be a little bit nicer. We all work with clients. We all know that there's so many variables and factors that go into producing work. And like people are really vicious sometimes with like what they say. And so I used to also be like, oh man, like, I don't know, this project didn't come out exactly how we want to. Like, should we share this or should we talk about this? But then it's also like, there's people on my team who are super proud of it and they are really excited by it. And ultimately, like, we produce something. Like, that's also pretty cool. Like, we mean something in the world, you know? So
And that's so hard.
balance that. Yeah. But I think also like we as designers should also be like nicer to each other because we all are trying really.
I agree. I even yesterday, Intercom launched their rebrand and I saw it all over Twitter. And people were being super harsh, like tearing it apart. Like how design
that was so weird.
But they were just being like extra. And I was just thinking back on all the rebrands I've worked on. I'm like, that work is some of the hardest work you could possibly do, especially being in-house. And for them to launch something that looks relatively good is so hard, given all the opinions and, you know, all the things that go on behind the scenes. So there's a lot of empathy that I think, you know, I hope to see people bring to the table more when it comes to sharing the work, being vocal on social media, being kinder to each other.
Yeah, I think there is like a part of it where the people with the empathy are not sharing things because we're nervous.
They're quiet.
So I'm just going to say myself.
Yeah.
I'm always afraid to post anything because I just know how mean people can be. And not that I think I mean, I have an understanding of what my studio does and it's cool work and I am proud of it, but it's still, there's something about it that just really freaks me out. Like what if someone says something super negative that just gets me like really hard and then I lose motivation for like the next day. I won't be able to do my work or something, or like I'll need to take a day off or something. I don't know. But it's just so silly though. It's like this, I don't know. I mean, I've tried that method of looking at it from elevating other people's work and their voices, but as like a 2-person studio, it's kind of hard sometimes because you're like, okay, so I'm just elevating myself by proxy, but like, you know, this other name that we go by, there gets like a little iffy at some points, but I don't know. The social media freaks me out sometimes and I want to share things that I know and because I've done a lot of stuff and I've seen a lot of things and I'd love to share that, but I don't know how to do that the best way. I don't want to be seen as like a thought leader or a content creator. So I've kept kind of quiet for the past couple years. I think
it is a lot like that. It's a lot like, I mean, Greta Gerwig, she's amazing, but she wrote that right in the Barbie movie. She was like, it's just like how we expect women to be. It's like, you should be like thoughtful, but not like too thoughtful. You should, you know, be successful, but don't be like too braggy about it. And like, you know, I think that like paradox is real, like, especially like, you know, I've seen like this buildup of like women too, like that are founders and we celebrate them and we're so excited for them. And then like, we cannot wait to like crush them or like find a loophole where they're like a human and we're like, oh, we are going to bring you down too. So it's terrifying to like put yourself out there because you're like, I also don't want to be taken down too. And I'm sure like I'm not a perfect human will come out of it inevitably about anyone, you know? So it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, for some reason this feels like a more it's not safer, I think, speaking to people and then putting it out there via podcast and on video, but there is something that feels good about being able to have more of a voice. Like it's not just like a snippet of information. It's more like there is a real human behind the mic. There is a real human behind the Twitter or the LinkedIn. And I am not perfect, but I do know a lot of stuff about design and the design industry. And I don't know. There's something about like this platform, like this sort of style, I think is very intriguing. Like I feel like everyone should have a video of themselves just talking about themselves on their website. Like that, instead of a website, everyone should have just like a little like, hey, this
Yeah.
is me. This is what I know. Let's talk. You want to talk? Cool. You want to hear my thoughts? Great. I don't know. That's very over the top.
No, there's definitely a humanizing element to video that I think becomes lost with social media. It
Yeah.
sometimes feel like, I don't know, social media to me feels like hiding behind a wall or something, and you can really be whoever you want to be, which is strange to think about. But
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like that.
Well, looking back at your super impressive career so far, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self just starting out? Whether in graphic design, advertising, or entrepreneurship?
I think that I worried a really long time about safety. I think that makes sense. Like I was like born into like a really weird situation where I was like adopted when I was 6. I was, I navigated a lot culturally, like just assimilating and feeling kind of always unsafe around like my home life and also then like work and working through like all these various different industries and feeling always like a little bit financially insecure. I think like I was always just really focused on like the safest things and trying to kind of navigate in like a safe lane for a very long time. And I think when I started letting myself kind of take risks and be okay and trust myself and trust my instincts and trust that things were going to be okay for me, I think that's like when things really opened up. And so I know that you can't like go back in time, but if I could, I would tell my like 21-year-old self, like, it's okay, like try doing those things. Like it's going to work out. Like you're going to be fine. And like, or even like my 2017 self when I was like afraid to like quit my job and like try, being really a focused parent and like trying building a company. I would have said like, go for it. Like it's going to work out. Like it's hard because, there's always these external forces and who we are as kids sometimes also follows us who we are as adults. And I have to kind of remind myself even days like this, I'm always like, oh, like, okay, like if the agency doesn't work out, like I can always go do this. Like I always like think about these like worst case scenarios. And I think like I hope in some point like I will like let that go and just be like, you know what, I'm actually in the best case scenario and like I can enjoy this. So I would say to younger people as well as like my younger self, like try to think of like the best case scenario. You don't always have to think of the worst case scenario and trust that it's going to work out for you.
I think that goes to not even just the younger people I'm listening to. I'm like, oh, yeah, I should take more risks. I should like feel more confident. There's a lot of opportunities that are continuing to happen as like people get older and like things fall into your lap and you can take them or you don't and then you can let them pass you by. And
yeah, I also think we all have a lot more time than we think. I think like it's so hard. Like everything feels, especially when you become a parent, like you feel like time is so finite and you're like, oh my gosh, it's going by so fast. I have no time. I have no time left. It's like you have time. Like you have more time than you think, and you should really try to make the most of it, and do what you want and do what you can,
Yeah, I'm wondering about like when you became a mom, do you feel like, because I don't know, for me personally, when I became a mom, all of a sudden, I realized like time had passed and I had not done as much as I had wanted to. And all of a sudden I had opened a new, not just like a new chapter, but a new book in my life, like the second book of my trilogy or something. I just felt like I was on the cusp of something totally new and undiscovered. And there was like so much time had passed, but also there's so much time ahead of me and this new life that I brought in. Like, did you ever feel that way? I feel like I'm just projecting the world right now, but like, was there anything that you felt like, I don't know, just like hit you or changed like dramatically when you became a mom?
I think like having a daughter first really helped because I thought about like talking to her and saying the things to her that I wish that someone had said to me, and like the encouragement that I wish that I had gotten. And I thought about like how powerful like creating space for someone to be kind of creative and also like loved and like cared for, like really can open someone up. And I think like just being able to kind of speak to her and like say the words to her, I think has actually given me more confidence too. Cause almost like I'm like reliving and like healing myself through her. You know what I mean? So I think like personally, yes. Professionally, probably not. Like I think I would be a lot more successful maybe if I did have a kid sometimes because like my time is really cut in half. Like I would probably be able to do even more things I want to do. But I'm so happy I have her and I'm so happy I have my like family life. It's like something I've always wanted. But I think like personally from like healing as a person, I think that like having a kid has been like life changing for me.
Well, I know we're over time and I want to be respectful of your time, but just wanted to thank you so much for hanging out with us today. It was so awesome just hearing about your story and your journey and super inspired by you. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.